Welcome to HealthWatch, presented by Novant Health. I'm your host, June Baker. Our show features local physicians and health professionals discussing health topics of importance to local residents. Today we have the unique opportunity to tour Brunswick County's 911 Communication Center with Lieutenant Todd Coring from the Sheriff's Department. Then we'll meet Brian Watts, our local emergency services director, and Art Dornfeld, a paramedic with EMS. Then we'll head over to Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center, where we will catch up with Dr. William Sherrod. Dr. Sherrod serves as both the medical center's emergency services medical director and the county's EMS medical director. Stay tuned to learn about valuable health topics with HealthWatch. Our first guest today is Lieutenant Todd Coring from the Sheriff's Department.
Well, welcome to the show today, Lieutenant Coring. It's a pleasure.
Yes, ma'am.
We're glad to be here. This is going to be a great show for our viewers. I'm real excited about this. First of all, tell me what your role is here at the 911 call center.
Well, I'm the director of the 911 center, which means I pretty much just oversee the daily operations and the functions here in our center and make sure that the staffing is where it needs to be and that we have our all of our equipment needs met and things of that nature.
Well, that's great. Well, let's just dive right in.
Okay.
Tell me what we're looking at here at the 911 call center.
Okay, well, this is one of our positions here, our CAD positions, or our call location centers, and this is one of our communication staff members that is working the station.
This is Miss Dana, right?
It is Miss Dana, yes. She's a very fine worker, and she is just taking calls, and they have several screens that they use to help process the calls. You have your radio CAD system on one side, then you have your actual calls coming in the center, and then you have a GPS screen which maps the calls. So sometimes, as big as our county is, it's hard to locate callers, especially those calling in with cell phones, so we can map the caller here, and then the phone system is actually in another monitor. So they have several monitors that they have to look at.
So if you were on your cell phone, the GPS would pick it up and show you your location?
Well, what happens when we have callers that call in on a cell phone, it gives us the address of the cell phone tower that you're closest to.
I see.
And then we have to do what we call a rebid on the address and use technology to help us locate the caller better. So all that takes place with the caller talking with our communication staffer at the time. So.
Okay. Well, tell me this, at a basic level, when do you call 911? I'm never real sure about that myself.
Well, and that's a real good question, because we have a lot of folks that wonder sometimes, when do I call 911, or am I bothering folks by calling 911? But any situation that you're unsure of, we request that you call 911, because if you hesitate on something or you doubt yourself, we would just rather you call us, and we have call takers that will take your information and they will field the situation and tell us what kind of response is necessary. So whether it's an emergency or non-emergency, we just ask that everyone call in for 911 assistance.
So, for instance, if I saw some strange person wandering around my neighborhood that I know they don't live there, I would call 911?
Yes, ma'am, and those situations are some of the ones that people ask about sometimes, but that situation could be something very urgent in nature. That person could have just broken into a house, or they could be looking at the neighborhood or casing the neighborhood. So if it's suspicious to you, it is certainly suspicious to us, because you're the eyes in that neighborhood. You know, our officers that patrol, they may think that person lives in the area, but you living there and seeing that and knowing that it's something that is kind of suspicious, that's alarming to us, so we just want you to call 911 for that.
Now, I have a security system at my house, and I'm curious how that works with the 911 call center, because I have a dog that has set off my motion detectors before in the house.
Yes, ma'am.
And the Sheriff's Department typically comes, or the local police department. Does that call actually generate here, or?
Well, a lot of questions are asked about that, but most of the time the alarm companies have their own call centers, and they're what we call a third party. So your alarm system will actually activate and go to their call center, and then they will send it to us or whatever municipality area that it's registered in. But all of the county calls come into our center, and we'll take the location and what type of alarm it is, and we will dispatch the proper needed resources.
Okay, well, let's talk about fire a little bit. Now, if there's a fire in a home and you place that call, does that call come here?
It does. If you call 911 from your residence or from your cell phone, it will come directly into our center. And like I said, we want you just to be patient and calm and be able to answer the questions that we will ask you, because when you call in, we have questions that we're going to ask to try to see what kind of necessary resources are needed. So we want to know if it's a car fire, if it's a vehicle fire, if it is a house fire, because those things help us know what kind of response we need to send for fire.
So you encourage folks to stay on the line. Don't hang up. Don't call 911 and say there's a fire. They need to answer the questions, and that would help you figure out what to do next.
Yes, ma'am. We're just going to encourage you to stay calm, and then we've got a series of questions that we will ask you, because like I said, we need to know exactly what's going on. You are there at the time. We're just sitting here trying to get the resources gathered to send to that emergency. So the information you give us is very, very critical. So we're just going to encourage you to stay calm and just answer our questions and stay on the line until they ask you to disconnect. Or if it's something that we need you to stay on the line for, we may ask that you stay on the line and to give us an update.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the medical side of it. Since we're focusing on that today and later on in our show.
Yes, ma'am.
When a call comes in and a person's like having a heart attack or something, tell me how that would work.
Well, what happens then, again, you call in and we're going to answer the phone, obviously, and we're going to ask, what is going on and where are you? And once we determine that it is, in fact, a medical emergency, we have an emergency medical dispatch procedure that's followed. And the primary nature of the call will dictate what kind of questions that we'll ask. And Dana's kind of pulling that up now. We have a Pro QA, priority dispatch, and that is fielded through our medical director's office and our paramedics. And we're going to ask you, what is going on, and try to find out some of those symptoms. And depending on the symptoms, there are actual types of emergencies that we can help you with and give you pre-arrival instructions until the medics do arrive.
So there may be some things you could start at home. Before the paramedics
Yes, ma'am.
get
Things
there.
like if someone is choking or someone has some severe bleeding or CPR instructions, our folks are the actual first responders to that emergency, and they will give you directions and assistance on the phone until we can get help to you.
And so I assume that there are policies and protocols already set up to determine the medical emergencies and what you do. If this is the symptom, this is what you do.
Right. So it's a computer-aided system, and all of the staff here they go to school for this, and they have hours that they maintain monthly, and keeps their accreditations up. And like I said, it will help us help you. Because sometimes, it takes a little while to get an emergency unit to your residence. So if we can keep you on the phone and keep you calm and you can give us updated information, we can help you with that.
How many dispatchers do you have here?
On a shift right now, we have 6 on a shift, and we have 32 total personnel with our communication staff. So at any given time, we have 6 to 7
people here. And
staff.
it's 24/7.
24 hours. We're always here and ready to help our public and get the help that you need.
Let's talk a little bit about the training that, for instance, Dana and the rest of the crew might go through in order to be a 911 call.
Well, we do. That's a good question. We do have folks that come in that do have training, and some are new, and they want to just come on board and help. But there's a series of schools that we send you to once you come in, and we get you acclimated to the system. We have to send you to a couple of different schools that are required by sheriff's training and standards, because we do fall under that. So there's a 40-hour class that you have to go to for that. Then there's another 3 to 4 day course that you have to go through for the emergency medical dispatch, and then there's some DCI, criminal information systems. So there's a lot of training.
That's a lot of training.
A series of 4 to 5 classes.
And is there ongoing training?
They do. Once you start here, you will train here in our center. So you'll come in, and like you said, once we get you acclimated and you get kind of settled in, we'll start you with the call taking usually first to teach you how to field those calls and things of that nature, and then we'll move you on to our fire and law and EMS consoles, because each workstation handles a different type of emergency responder area. So this is actually a law console, so she's dispatching for one of our law enforcement agencies in the county.
It seems like a stressful job. I'm sure you have support for your personnel so that if they need...
We do, yes, ma'am. There's a supervisor on each shift, and they kind of work with myself, and I have an operations manager, and sometimes we're listening in our offices, and if they have a situation that's critical or we see that there's something going on, we'll step in the center and talk with them and make sure that they're doing okay. And we try to debrief situations, and the sheriff's office is fortunate to have a chaplain's corps, and they work hand in hand with us. So when we do have those serious calls or a death call that, it's stressful on us because, you're on the phone with some folks and sometimes they pass away on the phone with our staff. So we have a chaplain's unit that will come in, and meet with us. So it's very helpful. So.
How many calls do you get monthly, let's say?
Monthly, they range from anywhere from 15,000 to 22,000, depending on what season we're in. Our summer season, with all of our tourists, it triples our population, so that'll run our call volume up. So.
Okay. Well, that's all great information. Just to be clear now, the 911 call center falls under the Sheriff's Department. Is that correct?
It does. That started here it's been a little over a year. In July, we started with the 911 center being under the Sheriff's Office. And right now we're in the process of building a new call center.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I heard that you're building a new call center.
Yes, ma'am. We're excited about that. It's a block away from this location now. And this building was operational in 1992. So the call center and emergency fire and EMS all ran out of this building. So there was a grant that was achieved, and it's a $2.1 million grant. So we are building a standalone call center next to our existing sheriff's office. So
and that opens when?
It will open, the building will be complete August of this year, and we will probably be operational in October.
Oh, that's great.
Yes,
so this year it'll be operational.
Right. There's a lot of equipment that's going in, and we're really excited. It's just a standalone call center, which will double our space here and give us room for expansion and future needs.
Will that mean all new equipment?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's great.
Yes,
so it'll probably have all the bells and whistles.
It will. We've got a lot of new technology coming in.
Sure.
And with all the cell phone calls we have now, it used to be back when I started working, I was actually a dispatcher when this building opened, right out of high school, and it was mostly landlines coming in. So if you called 911, us answering the phone would tell us your address and who lives there and what fire and EMS units are needed. But with the new technology and everyone going to cell phones, that call ratio is different now. It's about 80-20, 80% being cell phone callers calling in. So the public needs to know that when a cell phone call is received here, we have to find out where you are. So we encourage folks, especially with tourist season coming up, to know what town you're in. If you're here visiting, if you're on a beach and you have an emergency, know that you're on Oak Island or you're on Holden Beach. And
that's true. They might not even know their address
we have a lot
or where
of them
they are.
that'll panic. Riptides and things going on.
Right.
They say, I'm on the beach. I need an ambulance. So, what beach are you on?
Beach?
And they're in the middle of a crisis, so they don't really know. So we just encourage folks to know your location.
Well, that's been great information. This has been so interesting. I think it's important to get that information out to the viewers.
Yes, ma'am.
And so hopefully we'll be able to do that by having the show. So we're going to go out and we're going to look at ambulances now.
Very good. Well, thank you for
thanks so much for having us.
Yes, ma'am. We thank you very much.
And we'll come back when you have your new building. How's
we look
that?
forward to that. Yes, ma'am. We'll send you an invite. So we look forward to seeing you.
Great. And thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next guests are Brian Watts and Art Dornfeld with EMS.
Well, here we are at one of Brunswick County's emergency vehicles, and we have with us Brian Watts, the Director of Emergency Services, and Art Dornfeld, who is one of our paramedics. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So we're here to talk about what happens after the call comes to 911, and we've kind of gone through all of that with Lieutenant Coring. And so now I want to find out what happens with the ambulance. So walk me through what that looks like. A call has come through and they need an ambulance.
Well, once a call comes through to 911, it's dispatched to the closest ambulance, and we have a computer program that allows us to pick the closest ambulance based on road miles and dispatch the closest ambulance. So we try to deploy our units and move them around to where there will be we can make our response times in 12 minutes or less 90% of the time. So when that happens, the closest ambulance is picked and responds. They have to be out of the station and on the way within a minute.
Really?
And we have another software program that actually routes them to the call, much like a GPS in your car. So we'll route them to the call, tell them turn by turn how to get there, the fastest route. Wow. And so from there, we're able to get to the patient and start assessing their needs. From there, we try to figure out, what's going on with the patient, what kind of medical needs they have, which hospital they need to go to, and so we'll begin treatment at that point. We'll start our treatment. We can do anything that the emergency department can do in the first 30 minutes.
Really?
Right here in the ambulance.
I wasn't aware of
that. So we're able to start our advanced treatment, start treating heart attacks, start treating strokes, start treating trauma patients before we ever get to the hospital.
Wow.
From there, we will go to the hospital and report everything that we've done, which is normally quite a lot. And the hospital will take over care from there.
Okay. Well, Art, let me ask you this. Tell me about some of the training that you've had to go through in order to be an EMS paramedic.
For most of our staff are paramedics. We do have some intermediate and some basic because we also do non-emergency transport service. But for us, it's you go through basic EMT class.
Right.
And then after you complete that, most people go right to paramedic, get paramedic level training, which is all advanced cardiac life support, advanced trauma life support, working with the monitors and stuff like that. So it takes about 9 months for the paramedic training. Some people are doing an associate's degree program.
Right, would take a couple of years.
Exactly,
right?
which takes a couple of years. But for the most part, it's 9 to 12 months to become a paramedic.
How long have you been here at Brunswick?
Well, I've been here since 2005, so I'm going on almost 10 years.
So lots of experience.
Yes. I'm retired Navy, so I also did this in the Navy as well. So
so you had your training prior to joining?
I did. I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy.
I see.
My last duty station was Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, where I was in-flight medical technician on Pedro. The helicopter up there. So
wow, great experience to bring to Brunswick County.
Absolutely.
So we're really lucky to have somebody with your qualifications.
I'm lucky to be here.
It's a great place. Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, summer's just around the corner. We're just beginning. So tell me how that affects the 911 call center and the ambulance, the needs for the EMS ambulance.
Well, our call volume starts to go up about Easter, and there's increased call volume, increase in the number of calls that are on the beach communities.
Really?
And honestly, we have a lot of water-related issues then as well.
Yeah. How about if something happens, say they're fishing right off the coast of Caswell Beach or something? What happens then?
Well, we work with the Coast Guard. We work with the Sheriff's Office as well with their Marine Patrol. And for special events, we actually put our paramedics on the boats with the Sheriff's Office to help get the response times to where they need to be for that area. It's hard to get out in the ocean or out in the river for that matter.
Right. But I would think that there are a lot of water-related accidents or drownings and what have you. But it's good to know that you partner with other folks, such as the Coast Guard, just to get it done and make sure that the patients get taken care of. So now we have the patient in the ambulance, and we're ready to head towards Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center. Tell me what the hospital would expect and what kind of information you would be relaying to the hospital prior to arrival.
Well, we always have contact with our physicians that are at the hospital.
Correct.
We're going to give them a report as to what's coming in, and anything that we might not be thinking of that the physician would like us to do, he'll give us orders to do that as well. So we do have online medical control, but most of our medical direction is through standing orders and protocol. So we give them a heads up that someone is coming in with this type of medical emergency, but we always have the option to be able to ask them for advice on how to treat if we're sketchy on how we might treat them.
Art, tell me, you guys work closely with the medical director for EMS, and that's Dr. Bill Sherrod, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And does he help to develop the protocols and what have you that you use?
Dr. Sherrod provides us with continuing education, improves all of our protocols. He'll actually come and teach us different things, update us on different procedures. He's actually improved a lot on our patient care for trauma, doing less with backboards, things like that. So, actually working with backboards, actually bouncing down the road in the back of an ambulance on a backboard actually can do more damage than good. It just seems, when you ask the question, Well, why do we use a backboard? Well, because we always did, you know. So now the research shows that it's better not to use that. So he comes and teaches us the new way to do it.
I'm sure he's a good resource for that, because we have constant training at the hospital, and he's constantly being updated on best practices and stuff. So I'm sure that's very helpful to you.
Yeah, and you know, keep in mind, Dr. Sherrod was an EMT before he went to medical school.
And he's a local. And
that's exactly right.
Yes. Do you guys treat children as well as adults?
Absolutely.
Good.
Take care of pediatrics. Same way, they're just not little adults. They have special needs that they need. So, and we're all trained in taking care of that as well.
Yeah, great. Well, that's all great information. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers before we end this segment?
Well, you know, we're here for the citizens and visitors of Brunswick County. We have our emergency program as well as our non-emergency program. Art mentioned that earlier, but you know, should you need non-emergency ambulance transport, just give us a call as well.
That's one item I think I tend to forget. I forget that you do transport from home to a doctor's office, perhaps, or doctor's office to physical therapy or something.
Right. Take people to dialysis.
Dialysis. Yes, that's a great
absolutely.
one. I'm glad you mentioned that.
There's a number of dialysis places that we can take them to, sure.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you guys today, and I think this is doing a great service for the folks in Brunswick County. I'm sure they're going to learn a lot in these segments about what EMS is all about. So thanks again, and we'll come and see you in your new place.
All right, great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Our final guest is Dr. William Sherrod, a physician with Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center Emergency Department.
Well, welcome to the show today, Dr. Sherrod. We're here at the Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center Emergency Department, of which I believe you're the director. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Good. Well, we just left the 911 call center, and we saw the ambulances and stuff. And so what I'd like to do now is for you to walk us through what it looks like when a patient enters through the doors into the emergency department and out of the ambulance.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Okay.
So when patients arrive, they actually come into the ambulance entrance as opposed to the front of the emergency department.
Right.
The patients are brought in and evaluated by the nurses and placed in an appropriate room. We have several different rooms that they'll go through. If they have a hazmat emergency, then we might stop in a decontamination room so that we can clean up the patient before they go to their room. If they have a disease that might require isolation, we have a room for that. If they're very ill, then we have a major resuscitation or trauma room that we might utilize. We actually have 2 of those. So depending on their complaint, our capacity at the time, we make a decision about where's the safest place for them to be.
And tell me, when patients arrive via ambulance, does that give them any priority in terms of being seen first, as opposed to somebody who's in the waiting area? How does that process work?
Well, all patients will go directly to a room if we have a room available.
Gotcha.
But we triage everyone that comes into the hospital, whether it's from the front door of the ambulance, because some patients present with more serious complaints in the waiting room than the ambulance entrance. But we like to try and take care of everyone as quickly as possible, but we do prioritize based on the complaint, vital signs, and the severity of their initial evaluation.
Good. That's good to know. Now, I noticed when we drove up, there's a helipad out right out the door here. Tell me about that. What kind of patients would typically need a helipad?
We use the helicopter when the patient's out-of-facility transport time is important. So if we want to minimize the amount of time that they're away from medical care, the helicopter is the quickest way to go. Sometimes, due to weather or the patient's condition, an ambulance is still the quickest way to move a patient. And so it varies, but we have the helipad there so that we can move patients quickly. We mainly use it for the ST elevation MIs that present to our waiting room, so a heart attack with EKG changes. And it's usually New Hanover. We'll fly down New Hanover Regional Medical Center and transport the patients to Wilmington.
Yeah. I'm curious, what are the most common types of emergencies? What do we typically see here?
Sure. The main complaints that we see are exacerbations of chronic medical problems. Here it's congestive heart failure, heart attacks, that don't present with those EKG changes. EMS generally takes them directly to a facility with a cath lab. But it may just be chest pain without an EKG finding. Abdominal pain, headaches, minor trauma that does not meet the trauma criteria that goes to a trauma center, strokes, which is pretty much bread and butter emergency medicine.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, you know, summer's just right around the corner, and with all the beaches and what have you, I know we have a lot of issues surrounding those kinds of things. Let's talk a little bit about drowning and riptides and things like that.
Sure. Riptides, and we do have those here. There are places on our beaches where currents will come in and then they'll pass back out between bars, and it's a very rapid current that's hard to swim against. And so sometimes patients will get taken out in that. They'll become overcome with exhaustion trying to swim against the currents when they should be swimming along the beach to try and get out of the current.
Right.
And just trying to be calm and saving their energy to try and rescue themselves. But they might become overwhelmed. They might have a submersion injury where they have periods where they don't breathe and might require resuscitation. And we see that, unfortunately, 1 or 2 times a year here. Our main summertime injuries are still your stuff like sunburns and jellyfish stings and stingrays and fish hooks. But we train a lot for the more dangerous things like the drowning.
We talked to Brian Watts at the EMS Center about drownings, and he said that they see a fair number of drownings in a season, and talked about how they find the beach, you know, with the GPS system and what have you, because oftentimes it's a visitor and they're not sure which beach they're at. But when they get here, tell me what happens with a drowning victim. How does that work?
Well, depending on how ill they are, you know, they're usually placed in one of the major resuscitation rooms, given supplemental oxygen, and they'll receive a medical screening exam, and then receive whatever kind of, you know, treatment they need. Probably the most important aspect of a drowning care is what happens on the beach or happens at the scene. The arrest patients, when they have a drowning event, usually have an arrest that's related to a lack of oxygen. And the traditional training for CPR has us doing compression-only CPR. And for these folks, they actually need the rescue breaths. You need to get them some oxygen, and you still need to do your compressions to circulate that oxygenated blood. But doing that immediately is very important. There's a lot of people that are concerned about contracting diseases, which is pretty much unheard of, so you should be able to feel confident that just go ahead and do the mouth-to-mouth. It's very unlikely that you would get any infectious disease, but the patients need that, and their survival really is based on that. We had some very good training from an ER physician last year, Justin Simsrott, who's the medical director for an organization called Lifeguards Without Borders. He's kind of a classically trained LA lifeguard, who came down and gave us some education about what to do on the scenes to kind of give the patients the best chance of survival. And fortunately, after his training, we've been able to utilize that, and we actually had a successful patient that we treated that survived and was able to go home neurologically intact after a drowning. That's amazing. Yeah, it's fantastic. And some of the best news is having him come down and give us that education gave me the opportunity to ask him if he wanted to join us.
You're kidding.
No, he agreed. So in July of 2015, he's going to come here as a full-time emergency room physician. He's going to work for us full-time, but his passion is still drowning education. And he goes all over the world doing drowning education, and so we're very fortunate to be getting him.
Well, especially living in a beach community and having all this water around us, what a great bonus that is for us to have someone like that with that kind of training in our area.
Yes, and when he came, I asked him why he wasn't working at a beach, and asked him if he wanted a job, so I was tickled to death that he's coming.
Well, I can't tell you how excited we were to come here today and finish up our little tour, showing the viewers how our patients will end up here in our emergency department. So I thank you so much for having us. We'd love to come back when the new physician arrives and talk with him about summertime safety.
Oh, yes, and he's a wealth of information. He'll be happy to talk to you.
Great. Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to ATMC TV's Health Watch. I hope this information was beneficial for you and your family. If you have any questions or topics that you would like to see discussed on a future show, please email them to atmctv@atmc.coop. Visit NovantHealth.org for more information on Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center, local doctors, and general health information. Thanks again for joining us today. Be sure to join us next time for HealthWatch on ATMC TV.